Hey guys, it's Supa here, and today we have a new Spirit Beast, so let's go through it together. So let's take a look at it in this hero gallery over here, and it is called the Feathered Serpent. In my opinion, looks pretty cool, definitely not as cool as the Divine Griffin, but still a pretty nice design, and let's see what it does. So let's skip straight to its maxed out abilities, and we can see already there's a whole bunch of text. This is like crazy, and let's go through it slowly and hopefully we can understand all of it. So at 5 stars, cleanses 3 layers of non-control debuffs from all allies. Afterwards, does some direct damage to all enemies and inflicts Feathered Serpent Venom on them. So this reduces basic attack damage and skill damage dealt by 15% for 3 turns, up to 8 layers. That's quite a significant amount, so this is up to 120%. And each ally can trigger the following effects once respectively before the next turn starts. During a pursuit attack or counter attack, gain Celestial Blessing, which increases their skill damage by 40% and crit damage by 120%. Then when dealing internal injury damage, gain Celestial Blessing. I believe this is the same thing as above. Yep, for 1 turn. And if the internal injury damage is dealt to a boss, the blessing becomes even more powerful, where it has even higher skill damage and even higher crit damage. So from just this start alone, it can quite clearly be seen that this pet is going to be buffing pursue and attack or / counter attack teams, and one hero in particular which I think will benefit very strongly from this is Felicia, because Felicia not only does direct damage, not only does internal injury damage, but she does a whole bunch of pursue and attack and counter attacks, right? And they specifically do mention the internal injury tag over here, which makes me believe that this pet in particular is kind of focused towards Felicia, and this is going to massively increase her damage. So let's keep going. After all enemies have pursued an attack or have been pursued and attacked at least once, Feathered Serpent casts skills to pursue and attack enemies once again and gains Celestial Prayer. So this increases crit rate and crit damage, I believe, for the pet itself, lasting until it casts skills next time. This effect can only be triggered again after all allies act for at least 1 turn, which is a really low requirement. Then, after all enemies have been counter-attacked at least once, Feathered Serpent casts skills to counter-attack enemies once and gain Celestial Prayer. Okay, this kind of sounds like the same thing over here, right? Have been pursued attack. Okay, so it's kind of the same thing as it says counter-attacked. And then it also casts Celestial Prayer, same as over here, lasting until it casts skills next time. This effect can only be triggered again for after all enemies act for at least 1 turn. So yeah, exact same thing as above, except instead of pursue and attack, it's counter attack. I don't know why they had to write 2 entire paragraphs for it, rather than just saying either pursue and attack or counter attack. So a bit strange, but anyway, let's move on to the last part. At the beginning of each wave, for every 1 ally with the pursue and attack tag, Feathered Serpent will inflict 1 layer of Feathered Serpent Venom on the enemies for 1 turn. So I believe the Venom was the thing we saw at the start, which reduces their damage dealt. And then, if there are 5 allies with the Pursue and Attack tag, the Feathered Serpent's Venom inflicted by this effect will last for 2 turns. Okay, pretty nice buff, but not very significant, I would say, for the 5 ally requirement, although it's not too hard of a requirement to meet. And at the beginning of each wave, before the first turn of the ally with the highest mastery ends, the damage over time debuff inflicted by the ally will ignore block. Really strong. Hopefully, maybe this can counter Marie. When any ally that dies, Feathered Serpent will revive 1 random dead ally at the beginning of any 5 units turns later. Okay, afterwards restores a bunch of health for all allies and grants them Celestial Feather equal to the restored HP amount for 2 turns up to 5 layers, and this can be triggered once each wave. So Celestial Feather, if we just take a look, I think it was probably mentioned earlier. If we just look carefully, Celestial Feather. And I don't actually see what this Celestial Feather skill is, so I'm not too sure what this Celestial Feather skill is. Maybe it's just referring to this restoring of health or something, but if you do know, let me know in the comments. But so far, this character seems like a really strong character for both PvP and PvE. So the PvP related skills is the reduction of basic attack damage and skill damage on enemies. Increased damage dealt is also of course going to be very useful, especially for pursue and attack team, or even just any team with Felicia as mentioned, is going to be very useful for Felicia. And then this revive thing is probably the best part for PvP. And then for PvE, once again, pretty similar. Skill damage reduction, of course, is nice, but I think the best part is this increased damage, especially for internal injury characters. So as always, let's go into the Spirit Beast trial if we can find it. So I believe it's just somewhere in here. And maybe, okay, it's this one. And then, of course, let's just start with using our Spirit Beast food. So if you're planning to get the pet, generally it will cost you, I believe the first copy will cost you 100 USD, and then subsequent copies will cost you also roughly around 100 USD, but probably slightly more than that. So let's just use our beast food first, and then we'll proceed and do some testing in the trial. So all you have to do is go to this trial quest, and then you can do some fights. So I'm just going to do it on maybe a regular team, and I've actually done some fights already, and so I'll be able to show you the results and what I think of it. So in this arena zone, I actually only ever lose to 2 players, so that would be Advantage over here and High Traffic. Both are insanely strong players, and everyone else I can actually beat pretty easily. So I guess those are the 2 main competition that we'll have to take a look at and see whether the pet makes any difference. But before we do that, let's just try and fight someone who seems pretty strong. This guy seems not bad, although not the best. Okay, let's see if we can find someone better. Let's fight this guy. Pretty strong player, and of course we have this new pet over here. So since we are in the trial mode, we can't save a preset, so let's just at minimum start off with using Upstar Special 4, and from here let's just use our auto mode and see what the pet does for us. So the main things I'm looking out for is basically just the revive ability that the pet is supposed to do for us, and hopefully we don't kill him too fast. Once again, besides the 2 players I mentioned earlier, I beat everyone pretty easily, so it may be hard for us to find a fight where we don't win and then win with the pet. So yeah, you can see in this case we won pretty handily. So let's actually just go into our match history, and I will show you 2 fights where I used the pet in trial. So this is the first one, and you can see I actually lost. So this time I was using this new pet, of course, and then fighting against Advantage, who is definitely the strongest player in our zone and very, very difficult to beat. So without Griffin, I wouldn't even come close, and honestly, even with this new pet, it doesn't get any closer. So far, at least in my opinion, when it comes to Classic Arena in particular, I feel like this Feathered Serpent pet isn't going to be as strong as the Divine Griffin. Divine Griffin is just so strong in terms of what it does with that damage immunity, but you can see how much my team is reviving, right? My team essentially completely died, and because of the Feathered Serpent, I had 5 characters like revive, although, you know, I still end up losing. That revive is going to be really strong, and in fights which are normally much closer, you might have a much higher chance of winning with the Feathered Serpent. Just that in cases against fights against these 2 players, once again, they are quite significantly stronger than me, and normally the fights don't really come close. So this is against High Traffic. He's using a pretty similar setup, or he's actually using like the default Classic Arena defense setup. And you can see over here how this one goes. So once again, this is a fight I would normally lose anyway, and this time actually it was even less close. You can see my entire team died so fast, we didn't even get the revive off. So one last fight I'll show you is this one by J Peppers, and I noticed this, I thought this was pretty interesting because as I've said I think twice now, I only ever lose to 2 players, but this time you can see I'm losing to someone else. So he used the trial pet over here, and he actually managed to beat me. So let's see what happened here. So since I'm watching a defense fight, I am this guy, the guy on the opposite side, just remember that. And what you'll see, I've watched this replay already, is I actually kill pretty much his entire team pretty early on, right? So yeah, I'm low, but Divine Griffin saves me. And then after that, you can see that I do wipe quite a few characters on his team. So if you just wait a little bit, you can see I killed 3 characters, and in most cases that would have been enough for me to win the fight. But because he has the Feathered Serpent, you can see all 3 people I killed just revived, and because of that it's too late. I didn't manage to heal or get my second Divine Griffin immunity up, and that caused me to lose the fight. So there are these niche cases, I would say, where it results in you actually losing to the Feathered Serpent, but I think as a whole, Divine Griffin is probably a better pet. And I am using kind of a slightly off meta setup, so maybe let's try using Irato and see if this makes anything better. So just making sure that this is correct, which it does look like it is. And now we have a Feathered Serpent mirror matchup, right? And let's see who ends up winning this one. So I should at least manual the first few turns, because once again we have no presets when it comes to the Spirit Beast trial, which is why I also recommend that for the Spirit Beast trial, generally you want to take fights that you are confident you will win, unless you're just testing the pet itself and you don't really care about the wins. So our Marie managed to be revived there, and then yeah, the survivability is just really low when it comes to using Feathered Serpent. So because of that, I'm not too big of a fan, and yeah, I personally still think Divine Griffin is going to be a lot better for PvP content, even though, as you can see, there will be some occasions where having the Feathered Serpent will be more useful. However, the thing I wanted to actually focus on more is his PvE use, and we obviously can't test this by ourselves unless we have the pet, but thankfully one of my guild members, NCAS or NCCAS, actually has the pet and was willing to share some of his screenshots of the pet. So let's take a look at it together. So this was the original team that he used. You can take a look over here. This is for Guild Boss level 7, which is a pretty challenging area of content to get the max damage, which is 12 million. And you can see over here his team is pretty solid, so he's using a team which has Felicia as the core damage dealer. And we can see Felicia does about 3 billion damage over here. So he's using Unicorn pet, which is probably the best option before the new pet. And now let's see what happens when he starts using the new pet, right? So this is with the new pet. You can see everything else remains the same. And just with the new pet alone, you can see how much Felicia's damage increases, right? It increases by over 50%. And this is unsurprising considering what the pet does. We saw this when we were reading through the skills. It specifically buffs internal injury in particular, and also if you're fighting against a boss, which this is the case. And I mean, 1.5 times damage increase on Felicia is just insane, right? So let's just see some more photos shared by him. So this one was with his Lydia setup, and this time he swapped in Marie for Lydia. And you can see over here that Felicia still outdamages Marie, which is insane. He did mention that his Felicia gear is actually quite a bit worse compared to his Marie, yet his Felicia is outdamaging Marie in this case. So the pet seems to be a very, very strong Felicia buffer, and that of course is going to be really insane for all sorts of PvE content. And the last screenshot I have to show you guys, this is also PvP, but you can see he is actually fighting himself, and he has a very solid CC team over here using Divine Griffin as well, and he actually manages to beat it using this team which has Sun Oko, not even exclusive 3, Big Jack, Felicia, Talis and Kalana, and of course the new pet. You can see that in terms of damage, Felicia is carrying, and I'm sure of course the pet that he's using is helping a lot for survivability to revive the dead allies. So overall, I think this pet is looking really strong, but I think the main question people will be asking, especially if you're a spender, is it better than the Divine Griffin, and is it better than the Unicorn? And honestly, it's a bit early to tell, but so far, my guess is that Divine Griffin is still going to be the king of Classic Arena, going to be the best pet here. And unless we see some major meta shift in Classic Arena where we convert to using some sort of CC team rather than the Apsara or damage recording teams that we see currently, I don't expect the new pet to be used in Classic Arena. That being said, in Advanced Arena, I think there's no doubt that the pet is going to be used in at least one team. So my guess is that CC team is probably going to be shifted out of the meta in favor of some form of pursue and attack team. I think it's still also, once again, a bit early to say, but that is my prediction. And for PvE, definitely, I think it kind of depends once again, but for certain areas of content where survivability of less of an issue, I would say the Serpent pet is probably going to be better, but there are some cases of Divine Griffin where the skill he has which nullifies like the enemy's attack after taking fatal damage, I believe it's here. This skill, proactively cast next time, has a 100% fixed chance to be ineffective, This is really strong in 7 Sages of Luli, difficulty 7 for some bosses, so in that sense he's probably going to be unreplaceable. And then when we talk about Unicorn, I think Unicorn is still ultimately the king of PvE content, because I think survivability in general is usually the bigger issue for players rather than damage. And Unicorn also still buffs damage as well, by the way, so, you know, still good in both regards. But I think for PvP, the new pet is probably going to be better than Unicorn. Of course, time will tell. We are still very, very early into this Spirit Beast release, and we'll have to see, you know, more people testing and slowly watch how the meta develops. So even though maybe this isn't by far, you know, the best Spirit Beast that we have in the game on release, especially if we compare to Divine Griffin, which was like insane on release, like by far the best, right? It doesn't mean that the Feathered Serpent is weak by any means. In fact, he's very strong across all areas of content, and we'll just have to see where he fits in these top-end teams. So yeah, that's all we have for today. If you guys enjoyed this, of course, leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.